Let's get started. Pride PEI is dedicated to providing space that's accessible, inclusive, and free from oppression, harassment, and discrimination. In this space, we will treat each other with respect and dignity, regardless of age, race, gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, levels of ability, and all our other diverse identities. Everyone entering this space has a responsibility to uphold these values. As well, Pride PEI and the PEI Pride Festival operate in Mi'kmaq, the homeland of the Mi'kmaq people. We recognize that the land on which we gather is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq First Nation, and we pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq people of this territory, past, present, and future. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship with Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. And please be advised that this webinar is being recorded for future rebroadcast, and you may be recorded if you engage directly with the panelists via voice or video of your own volition. By engaging in that way, you are granting Pride PEI and its partners permission to use your recorded likeness in future. Thank you. So without further ado, it's July 30th, and this is our second Pride Zoom Festival 2020 on Sobriety and Pride. I'm pleased to welcome Chelsey Rogerson, our moderator, Jennifer Crawford, a panelist, Kendi Tarichia, another panelist, and Troy Perrot, our third panelist. On the Pride PEI team, you have Shannon Snow, our event organizer, joining us. Andy Glyden, available in chat as our facilitator. My name is John Kimmel, and I'll be your chief geek. Some quick ground rules as we get started. Feel free to keep it loose in the chat. As a participant, you have two options. You can message only to all panelists. All panelists is those of us that I just announced that you can see on screen, and that is relatively anonymous. Or you can message to all panelists and attendees. In doing so, you'll share your name with folks, but you can also start a public thread. Don't hesitate to get noticed. If you want to either use the Q&A feature available either at the bottom of your screen on desktop or using the hamburger icon, the three dots or the stack in the bottom right-hand corner of your mobile screen to find the Q&A feature. You can ask questions there anonymously if you'd like, or raise your hand. Again, like I mentioned, all panelists is available only for private or anonymous messages, or if you have a technical issue. If you'd like to be public with any of your messages, that's all panelists and attendees, and we are recording. So without further ado, I'm going to start screening my share. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and throw things over to Shannon, our event organizer.
Hi everyone, so I'm just going to jump in quickly here to introduce our moderator, Chelsey. So Chelsey Rogerson is a seasoned political staffer. She's currently the executive assistant to the Member of Parliament for Charlottetown, Sean Casey. She's an avid volunteer, having previously sat on the board of Pride PEI. She is currently the secretary for the Rotary Club of Charlottetown, a member of the steering committee for the PEI Coalition for Women in Government, and a Smart Recovery facilitator. Chelsey lives in Charlottetown with her partner Sarah and their two West Highland White Terriers.
Great, thanks so much for introducing me, Shannon. I'm really excited to be here tonight, and as a former Pride PEI board member, I'm really excited that I was asked to moderate this panel. As Shannon said, I am a Smart Recovery facilitator. If you haven't heard of Smart, it's a recovery group that meets all over the world, but we have meetings here in Charlottetown as well, and it's a non-denominational group. What I do at those meetings is pretty similar to what I'll do here tonight, which is to facilitate a conversation. I have not been able to be a facilitator for the past few months due to COVID, so I'm really excited to be back and to be doing this tonight. As was previously mentioned, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can put them in the chat and I will do my best to navigate that as we move along. I do have a few prepared questions for our panelists, but if anything comes up, please feel free to get your thoughts out there to us, either to us as the panelists or to everyone. So I think that this is a really important conversation for us to have. I don't think we've had it as part of official Pride events in the past. So I'm really excited that we're doing this. Just to give us a little bit of a frame of reference of why we're having this discussion here tonight. I'll do a little bit of an intro and then I will move it to the panelists. And from that point, the less you hear from me, probably the better, and I'll just be here to help facilitate our conversation. So Pride is a celebration. It works to advance the recognition of our rights and all the advancements that we've made as a community. But that unity is sometimes overshadowed by a darker problem, and that is alcohol and substance abuse in our community. And the struggles that people in our community have trying to find treatment that works for them, that also recognizes their sexual orientation. We do know that alcohol and drugs do not discriminate. So this is a disease that affects people for all races, sexual orientations, age, and socioeconomic status. But we do know that our community is even more vulnerable to this issue. So the CDC reports that the LGBTQ2+ community are more likely to use alcohol and drugs, to have higher rates of substance abuse, to not withhold from alcohol and drug use, and to continue heavy drinking later into life. So why does our community struggle with this problem? Well, studies have pointed out several reasons. Fear of rejection from family and friends, which causes stress and emotional trauma. The fear of and the experience of violence and harassment. And that ranges from something that you may see as minor, like teasing, up to something very, very serious, like violence and even murder of people in our community. So we know that that causes a lot of fear, a lot of stress, and a lot of emotional trauma as well as internalized homophobia. That can cause low self-esteem, fear of rejection, feelings of isolation, and the use of drugs and alcohol as a social aid. So traditionally, the way that we would meet other people in our community was to go to a bar or a party, and that was our way of connecting. There's also another factor that may keep you addicted, and that is a fear of seeking treatment. So some health practitioners, either they're not familiar with, they don't understand, or they simply don't accept our lifestyle. And that prevents many of us from going to a healthcare provider to speak about substance and alcohol abuse, as well as other healthcare issues. So now that I've done my little intro, thank you for bearing with me. I want to ask our panelists to tell us a little bit about your experience with substance use and abuse. And in order to keep you all from jumping at once, I'll just call on a certain person to start from each question, and then we can kind of move around. So again, tell us a little bit about your experience with substance use and abuse. And we'll start, Troy is joining with us. You can't see him on video, but he is with us, and maybe we'll start with Troy.
Hi, Chelsey. Thanks for the, and thank you to Pride for inviting me to do this. I was very apprehensive at first, to be honest. I was kind of looking forward to doing this in person in a smaller setting, and then when they said it was going to be on the net, I thought, oh God, what am I doing? Because it's going to be going everywhere for people to see. And smaller groups, I feel a little bit more secure. And when it's to everywhere, then I have my fear comes back. And it's a fear that I know well. And it's a fear that I've lived with since I was a gay boy growing up in Montague. And I've always had a healthy fear of groups, in particular groups of young men, where I've been bullied and beat several times over the years. And my years of growing up there weren't kind, and unfortunately a lot of that led me to alcohol and drugs as my means of escaping and dealing with some of those issues. And then when I kind of got away from Prince Edward Island after I graduated high school, I ended up in an urban community where I could find my community and find other people that were like me. And that was a very life-changing experience, but also some of it was good and some of it was bad. And some of the bad things that happened were I entered a community that drug and alcohol was certainly at the center of that community. And we met it was a bar scene, very much in that early 90s period in urban parts of Canada. And it was really one of the very few places that you go to meet other gay men. And I'm sure it was the same for gay women as well. But for me, I'm just speaking my own personal experience. And I went to my very first gay bar in Calgary. And within, a very short period of time, I was working in that environment. I was working at the local bathhouse. And for any of you who doesn't know what that is, that's a whole other experience. It also had one of the few bathhouses in the country that actually had a bar in it. So it was extremely embedded in that alcohol and drug culture. Drugs were very much a part of it. And it was just, if you weren't doing some form of drugs, there was something wrong with you. At that time, cocaine was a huge, big party favor. And I don't think I saw very many people that didn't do it. And unfortunately, it's also, I can honestly be grateful that I didn't get addicted to that particular one, but I certainly abused it and many other forms, alcohol in particular. And I put myself into some very questionable situations. And one of those situations was I trusted someone who I thought was there, who was going to help me out, and unfortunately put myself in a situation where I ended up getting raped. And my experience after that, I kind of went into I blame myself for putting myself in that situation. I kind of felt that I should have known better. I shouldn't have, and then I didn't know how to tell anybody that this had happened to me, and it took me 20 plus years to actually even accept that it even happened. And I drank a lot and did an awful lot of drugs to kind of try and cope with it. And when I was 21, I was diagnosed with HIV. And, the first 5 years of that weren't fun because those were in the days when we thought we were going to die very quickly. And then treatment came along and then I had to learn how to get a life. And, life is good now, but it's been a long road. And I'm certainly not alcohol or whatever drug free. I mean, there's a very small things that I will do now, but it's choosing when to engage and how to engage. I think this is a very important part of this discussion, and I'm looking forward to hear what everyone else has to say about it. I'm going to stop and let someone else chat for a bit. Okay. I could go on for hours, so I'm not going to do that.
Well, we have an hour and a half, but thanks a lot, Troy. I really appreciate you. I know it's tough being the first one to go, so thank you for doing that. And thank you to everyone in advance for sharing your stories. I know some of what we're talking about is really heavy stuff, and it can be hard, but your story can really help impact someone else who's struggling right now. So I really appreciate you all for being vulnerable with us tonight and doing that. Maybe we will move on to Kendi next to talk a little bit about your experience with substance use and abuse.
Okay. Mine kind of started with a party life in college. Chelsey, went to UPI together. So for the longest time, it didn't really look like addiction. It just looked like I was down for a good time. And after college, like that spiraled and it became a good time was 9 a.m. It took me about 8 years to kind of realize it was a problem. And what made me realize that was mostly addressing like the traumas that made me want to drink. And a big one of those was like a sense of never belonging, which I think like probably resonates with a lot of folks in this Zoom. So for me, being visibly Black, being young and queer, being an immigrant, all those things, I was always othered. I was always something else. I always stood out, and not always in the best way. And that starts to eat at you and just kind of, for me, I felt like then I'll fully stand out, which meant I would drink and have like way more personality than I have a great personality, but I would just, overcompensate for it because I was really trying to belong in whatever square society kind of had created for me. So it's been about a year and almost 2 months that I've been sober. So I'm relatively new to sobriety, and I don't know, so far it's been the best year I've had yet. I'm excited to another 75 years, but for right now, like every day is like pretty dope. So that's my journey.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendi. And Jennifer, last but not least for this question.
Am I unmuted? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me and giving me the chance to share. It's one of the things that helps keep me well, getting to talk about this stuff and share about what happened for me and what works for me in terms of like staying sober. I'm coming up on 2.5 years on August 5th, which just feels bananas to me. Thanks. My drinking started really young. We had, I don't know, if you're from the East Coast, you might know what swish barrels are. They're like old rum and whiskey barrels that like you fill with water and then you put out in the sun to like seep out all the old alcohol from the wood. Oh my God, that sounds so gnarly now that I say it out loud. Anyway, we had one of those in the backyard and I didn't really know much about it other than like my dad was so stoked to have gotten one of these barrels. And anyway, I would avail myself of that tap on it while we were playing tag. And like, I just knew that like adults had a fun time when they were doing alcohol things. So whenever there was like family parties, I would be stealing some. The first time that I remember getting like ripped was the night before grade 9 started. I was so nervous and I was just a very nervous person, which I see now as probably all sorts of like untreated different things, but yeah, just really anxious. And it's funny, like at no part in my like actual decades of drinking did I see it as a problem. Like not once, like right up until the day I stopped drinking, I would have been like, it's like, this is not a problem, it's the solution. And it's what I used for coping with my dad's death when I was really young. The myriad of different assaults that happened to me as a result of like really homophobic stuff and really misogynist stuff. Like after my dad died, I drank every single day for 4 months straight and like partied so good and got A+ in all my classes, ran a marathon, like this sort of like, it's like that blueprint of getting wrecked and overachieving got like impressed on my 20-year-old brain where I was like, oh, that worked. Like that made me not feel that grief so bad. Like, and then that's what I applied to literally everything for the next 15 years. And like it really worked in some ways until it really didn't. I hit rock bottom pretty spectacularly, and it became clear that I was either going to find a different way to live or I was going to perish. And there was like, I just loved living so much still, even though I was miserable a lot of the time. Like I really wanted to stick around. So I'm really grateful to all of the other alcoholics and addicts who supported me as I got better, and just to, yeah, for events like today, getting to talk about it because this supports me now still. So thanks very much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. Through question number 1, we can kind of relax a little bit. We're in the groove now. So with your experiences with alcohol and substance use, I just wonder, you're making that decision to either stop or cut back or to make a change. How did being part of the LGBTQ2+ community, did that help or hinder your ability? Do you feel like it had an effect on those decisions and how you were able, what recovery paths you chose? Maybe I'll start with Kendi first.
I think I'm pretty new to the community. So I came into the community once it sobered up. Part of my sobering up was who am I now that I'm sober and I have kind of forever with me, which meant I came out. So, so far, I think I'm finding, yeah, I am finding community. I don't know if there's like supports on sobriety. Maybe like this is like the first time I think like we're having a conversation about with the LGBTQ community and sobriety actually. So I've mostly partied with the community. But I'm kind of looking forward to seeing where this will go. Like what's it gonna look like now that we know that there is folks who are in recovery or folks who are struggling in our community, like what kind of spaces will we create from there? So I think mine is more moving forward versus during active addiction.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Troy?
It's a really good question, and it's the one that I've kind of thought about on and off over the years. I've been around this community for a long time, and it's, I guess for me, I'm not, I wouldn't consider myself fully in recovery. I'm kind of, I found what works for me at this point in my life. I don't know if that's, you know, the best for everybody else, but certainly what's helped me. And part of that process has been, I've had several different things. There's the alcohol and the drugs, but there's also, I guess I kind of got nervous, so I stopped earlier. And I felt like I was taking too much time, and I didn't realize we actually had an hour and a half. So I guess it's that part of the reason I just kind of shut up. But part of my story, I guess, that I didn't really finish earlier was that after I was diagnosed with HIV in 1993, when I first came back to Prince Edward Island after living away for a few years in a more urban setting, part of that was going through getting tested, and that was a very traumatic time for me. I know it was traumatic for my family. It was traumatic for everybody around me. But in particular, I still was using alcohol and drugs at that time. I had cut back a lot. I mean, I wasn't using the amount that I was when I was in urban settings. And then when I say urban settings, I mean in gay bars. I really don't feel at any point in my life that I really felt 100% comfortable being in a gay bar unless I had something in me, alcohol, something of some sort. Because I had some social anxiety. I didn't know how to interact with other people. And I used alcohol in particular to warm myself up. And then, I always smoked cigarettes, and then I'd be outside smoking, and then there'd be a joint going around, and then you'd have a little toke, and then that led to something else. And and that was just normal for me at that point in my life. And then after I came back here and got diagnosed with HIV, and I was like such a wake-up call. And when I was 21 years of age, I had, really only had high school education at that point. And then, the doctors told me, get your affairs in order. You'll probably only have 3 to 5 years to live. It was just like, oh my God. I was ready to, I shut down. I literally shut down. Emotionally, physically, everything for a long time. It took me, I would say, a good year and a half before I started re-engaging. In some ways, I was volunteering with, at that time, AIDS PEI, which is now Peers Alliance. That organization has been critical in my still being here in many ways. They helped me in many, many ways over the years. I volunteered with them, and then I developed into a full-time position. I worked for AIDS PEI for a number of years. And during that time, I certainly didn't continue to drink the way I did and do drugs all the time. I mean, I certainly would smoke a little joint once in a blue moon with some friends, but I certainly didn't party the way I used to. And, you know, and I had met my partner that I'm with today back in '93 after I had moved back here. We've been together for on and off for over 25 years. I guess some of the other things that after I was diagnosed, I guess where I'm going with the story is that I started dealing with side effects of HIV. And some of those were, I developed neuropathy, which is a leg pain. It's nerve damage in the legs, and it can be very painful, and mine was. And the doctors prescribed me Percocet to deal with that. And it's like, oh, these are great. I don't feel anything. I can Zoom. It was fantastic. You know, at least in my kind of addict brain at that time, that's what I felt. And, you know, I quickly went from taking 2 a day till taking 12 a day, and still using, you know, other alcohol and so forth. And that eventually led me to going on to treatments and getting off of them because they were destroying my life. And to this day, I was on methadone for a number of years, which I hated with a passion. But I'm now on Suboxone, which I actually tolerate much better. And that's something I have to deal with. I take that every day. So that's part of where my journey has led. I'm still not, I wouldn't consider myself 100% sober, but I'm drug free. I don't do any other kinds of drugs. I just drink a beer, or, you know, we go out to a social setting where I may have a toke of something maybe once a year, but that's what I limit myself to. And that's the choices I've had to make, because where I engage and when I engage. But I strongly feel that our culture that we developed, especially in the 90s, I guess it happened even in the 80s before I really kind of came onto the scene. Our culture for many years in the gay community centered around bars. It's where we met, it's where we hooked up, and drug and alcohol was such a big part of that. And actually, I remember going to HIV conferences and going to different workshops where HIV specialists would do presentations, and some of the titles were like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And some of those things I learned a lot. I learned a lot of things about why I did what I did. And I also found ways to help cope with some of those things. And I don't know, it's still a struggle for me in some ways with I think part of mine is I just hate being stigmatized one more time over something else, having been stigmatized so much over my life. And the way people treat you as soon as you admit that you've struggled, that you have alcohol and drug issues, or that you're an addict, people just immediately change just like that. I've had it happen to me so many times. And, you know, they think you're engaging with someone, you're getting along fantastic with them, and as soon as they hear that you've had those issues, they immediately just write you off, or they put you in a box, and I don't know, they treat you differently. They always do. I don't know if other people have experienced that, but it's certainly been my experience.
Thanks for that, Troy. I think that especially even just in the context of us living on Prince Edward Island, we know that there is a high level of alcohol abuse and PEI. And I know I've had this discussion in meetings before that, you know, if you tell someone, yeah, I don't drink, I have a drinking problem, they're like, no, you don't. You're fine. You don't have a drinking problem. You work every day, or you do this or that. And there's kind of not intentional perhaps, but trying to delegitimize what you're saying is a serious problem for you. And if you don't have the strength at that point to be able to say no. It's so easy to fall back into that because it's easy to just be like, oh yeah, you're right, I guess I'll have one. But you know, deep down, you're not the type of person that can have one. So I think that's a really tough thing, is like, how do you talk to those other people about, this is a choice I've made and I need you to support it, whether it's someone who's close to you or someone, a new person that you meet. So I think it's really important that you brought that up. Jennifer, I guess same question to you, just in choosing that you were going to make that decision to stop drinking, did your sexual orientation help, hinder, did it play a part in that? And then as well, if you have any thoughts on what Troy was saying as far as being able to navigate those relationships with friends or new people, and how do they take it?
It's both, right? Like, I think there's stuff about my queerness that is like the greatest delight of my life and what saved my life probably while going through that. But then there was other barriers that it created that, like, I didn't create those barriers, like other, like, not great things created those barriers. Like, I remember talking to a psychiatrist, like when I was at like my lowest of lows, like just trying to figure out how to live. And like I had just late stage PTSD at that point as well, like because drinking had really stopped working. And in the appointment, the first question that he asked me was, oh, it was just so dismissive. I can still remember it. Like, can you just explain this queer thing? And I was like, what? Like, I am an exhausted trauma baby. Like, I'm here for help. Like, what? Like, and then like I tried to do like a queer 101 really quick, and it wasn't good. I was like not in a good place. Yeah, just he then, like, I explained a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with, and he was like, you just seem so strong though, like you should be able to kind of deal with this stuff. And it just kind of walloped me in this, like, man, like that has been my problem my whole life, is like this like strength drag that like I've put on. I could not get read as struggling, no matter if I was like wearing a coat of red flags. Like it could not happen. And I think like some of it, like I had internalized some homophobia in a weird way, in which like I always wanted to be like, I don't know, like super happy, showing all the best parts of queer culture, like an ambassador for being queer, because like I love it so much and it is like the best. But there's also lots of really like traumatic stuff that happens in the queer community too, you know, and I had really squished a lot of that down for a really long time. And yeah, and then like, I mean, I think like because, so like you said at the start, Chelsey, like talking about like the prevalence of like substance use and abuse in the queer community, like there is like a level of acceptance and love and like knowledge around this stuff that maybe like if I were straight, like I don't know if they would have been so like held and loved by everyone around them, because there was such a I don't know, maybe I was really fortunate with the people that I had around me, but like incredibly understanding and like incredibly supportive. And like the people who kind of fell out of my life, like when I did quit drinking, it happened like really unceremoniously, like like as you grow, things change, and there was never any like events or like kind of breakups or anything like that. Like things just changed. And yeah, I hope that answers it. It's like, yeah, being queer is the best possible thing that could have happened like when I was trying to get sober. And also it was hard sometimes, which is actually true for, you know, most things, not just sobriety, I guess. Yeah,
I think that your example with the therapist that you went to, a lot of people could relate to that, because a lot of times when you see a healthcare practitioner, if they're not part of the community or not understanding, you're constantly having to re-explain things to them that, you know, you'd wish they would get right off the bat, but they're not quite getting like, you know, and I know especially for women, we get asked a lot at the doctor, you know, well, are you pregnant, or could you be pregnant? No, I can't be. And the doctor's like, well, are you sure? And you're like, yeah, I'm sure, because they don't even think that, you know, like you really, and then you have to kind of come out all the time. So something as simple as that, and that can be really difficult for people, especially if they're not feeling confident right now in their sexual orientation. You know, a lot of people, it's nerve-wracking just enough to go see a healthcare professional, let alone have that added kind of stress and anxiety on top. So
may I add one thing?
Of course.
Okay, I just wanted to say too, like that it's like, if you're new here, like if you're struggling with sobriety right now, and like, yeah, telling people is so scary, and like kind of picking who you disclose to about it is like, I don't know. I hope that you get met with all sorts of support and love, and it's here in this Zoom room anyway, so you can always start with us, and yeah, take it from there.
Well said, well said. So what are some coping strategies that you all have in place that allow you to participate in activities like the Pride Festival? So we know that, I know in the past few years, Pride has done a really good job of trying to offer a wide range of activities, so family friendly to sober events as well. But how do you cope in those situations where you know there's going to be drugs or alcohol involved? And maybe we'll start with you, Troy.
Well, it's a really good question. I've been on Pride myself over the years. I've been on the board of peers and several other organizations, but the organization, the previous incarnations of Pride and the Advocate Rainbow Collective, which is one of the earlier organizations that was around, we struggled in many ways dealing with this issue, not just for gay youth, because that was an issue for gay youth coming into the community and trying to provide events that were open for youth, but when the community's small and it costs a lot to put these events on, and there's no sponsorship because not at that time no businesses wanted to support us, and we didn't have the government giving us money to do, put events on for our community. We didn't have businesses that would put their name behind a gay organization, and they were scared of losing business and whatever. So we really made do with very little money and tried to put these events on. And what it left us being in a position that you had to make events as cost effective as possible, and trying to put an event on that was a sober event where there was going to be no drugs, no alcohol sales. Alcohol sales are what pays for rooms in many ways in a lot of these events. And it's not necessarily always true, but it happens a lot within our community. And trying to put these events on for sober events was a struggle. And anytime we would try one, we had a vocal opposition to them, and then we had a very poor turnout. So it was always that. I don't know, and I'm not sure what it's like now for Pride, but I'm sure it's still a struggle in some ways. I hope that we have come a lot further, that we are able to do some of these things now. This is the very first time I can actually say we've had any kind of a conversation publicly about it, and I'm really glad that we're getting there, because it's something that needs to happen. We really need to provide these spaces for people if we're going to try and help keep our community healthy. We want to provide spaces where people can feel safe, and many of our community do not feel safe if they're in a spot where there's alcohol and drugs. And I know myself, I have to really limit my interaction with some of those events because of that. I really have not gone to main Pride events for years because I know if I went, I was going to get wasted. And so I just chose what events I would go to based on, what I could afford, and B, what I felt safe doing. And I'm sure many others have done the same thing. On top of that, when you're going to these various events where there are, when lots of drugs and alcohol are there, trying, as soon as you, like for me, I've always been one of those, if I have one, I'm going to have a lot. So one of my issues over the years was I would drink to the point of excess, to the point of blacking out. And then you would wake up somewhere and not know who you were with, or, if you used any kind of protection, if you even thought to. I went through years of doing that. And then after I was diagnosed, it was like, oh my God, I have then it's a whole other thing. I have this thing, I have to be responsible to other people. And I wish someone had been that responsible to me at one point, but anyway, that's neither here nor there at this point. It's something that I've had to deal with over the years. And, now I'm on a medication that keeps me healthy, and it keeps me undetectable and makes me non-infectious. But it's still, that can change very quickly if I was using all the time. Certainly if I was using drugs and alcohol to the point where I was falling down drunk constantly and, not eating right, your health would go to pot really quickly. And so those are the things I have to be very careful of. And going to an event that's not such a big issue, or if it can't be, I guess, when very blatant, then you have this whole group of people. So I'm making it like a family-friendly event maybe helps make it a lot easier for people. I don't know that it would for me, but that's just my suggestion. Oh, I lost your voice, Chelsey.
Sorry, I muted myself.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm back. Thanks a lot, Troy, for that. I wrote just a couple of things that you had mentioned that I think you made such a good point that previously, historically, especially locally, we've had no financial support. So the only way to make money is, you're right, liquor sales or door sales is the only way. And when you don't have money to run an event, that's what you need to do to run the other events. That's how you make the money. So I think that being able to get funding from other sources, it will be really important for Prides moving forward to be able to offer a better array of activities as well. I think you mentioned that, that's what the community wanted as well. They want that opportunity. And I think that is important that people have that opportunity, but also I think you had mentioned before, it's really ingrained in our history, because that was one of the only places that we felt safe, was to be in a bar or at a party in someone's home, because then you wouldn't be outed, right?
Exactly.
So it's even because it may be the generations before us, it's still rooted in the community and how we connect and how we celebrate. So it is really hard for people who are struggling with using alcohol or using drugs, especially if they're coming into their sexuality and they are using that as a coping mechanism to, feel secure and to feel comfortable in a new, scary environment. So it is really tough. And like we've said before, it's really been glorified in our community to party and, use party drugs that they say are just specifically even for the gay community. And it is really important that we are having this discussion. I think it's going to make a really big impact. So thanks a lot, Troy. I really appreciated everything that you said. And maybe I'll move on to Jennifer now. So just back to our original question was just some of the coping strategies that you have in place so that you can enjoy Pride activities where there may be alcohol or drugs.
I think one of the funniest things about like life pre getting sober and post getting sober is that I thought the mark of like good sobriety for me would be being able to live life the exact same way, enjoy all the exact same things, do stuff that I always did, and like have all the exact same friends, and basically just be like the exact same, but not drinking. And it just turns out like that's not what happened. Like all of a sudden the like boozy all night play parties just didn't, I don't know, they're still cool for people who want to go to them. Like I think that's amazing, and I have lots of very good memories. But they just weren't on my horizon of things that I desired to go do anymore. Like stuff just kind of changed when I got sober, and I was just drawn to different activities at Pride. And I mean, like I don't think I ever thought about it in terms of like, this is such a good question because I've never thought about it as like concrete coping strategies. It was like always checking in with myself. What do I actually feel like doing this Pride? Like, what are the events that appeal to me? And I've always really loved going to the Trans March. So like I've always gone to that, and like that felt good. And we'd usually, I don't know, kind of hang out in the beer garden for a minute after, and then we leave. Like as soon as it doesn't feel good anymore. It's kind of, I guess that's a strategy, just kind of constant checking in with like how I'm feeling, and having also like kind of a safe sober pal with me. Yeah, like just to also check in with them, and we just take care of each other. I guess it was kind of a buddy system. I didn't really mean to do that, but that's what we did. And then just stuff like, yeah, I guess last year, one of the, like I went to the Trans March, and then I went to like the run in the morning, not to actually run myself. Like, that's not, yeah, I don't really run, but like to cheer on everyone. And it was so special. Like, man, I used to still be awake when people started the run. Like I was still up from the night before and would be like, squares. But like now I'm just like, so I don't know, things have just really changed. And like to me, that was like the most exciting and beautiful, yeah, it was the most exciting and beautiful event, and cool to root for people. And so many people were doing stuff in memoriam of other people. And yeah, it was just really nice. I guess like having the clarity to know what I actually want to do and what actually feels good to me is a gift that came from like working on my sobriety. Is a gift that came to me from working on my sobriety. So that means when things like Pride come up, I am pretty in touch with what I feel up to doing, what I don't feel up to doing, and what feels like it would be a good Pride for me. Because I think before I didn't really know. I was just like, let's get wrecked, and we'll all like hug each other and smooch a lot, and it'll be amazing. Which also was like, yeah, no shade at that. It was also great, but yeah, things just change over time, and it's nice to be able to be in tune enough and sober enough to like notice that and like not feel scared saying no when something doesn't feel great anymore.
I think those are two really good suggestions for coping mechanisms. Just knowing yourself and what you want to get out of an event so that you don't go off the rails, and having somebody there with you who can kind of support you through it, especially the first few times that you're going to an event sober and it's a new experience. I think that's really important. Kendi, yourself, any coping mechanisms you have in place for being able to enjoy these events without partaking?
Mine comes from, I had about a year where I didn't really have to work, go to school. I didn't have a lot of responsibility for about a year, which let me really explore who I was as a sober person, which I know a lot of folks don't get. Like, you know, I was really blessed that my family can create a space like that. And in that year, I was able to kind of test things and be like, okay, how does this feel? How doesn't it feel? And some of the things I realized is that like, you know, there's a time of the night when other people get to that point where it's like, it looks really fun. It looks really good because people are hooking up. This is happening. That's usually my cue to leave. You know, I'm like, you know, I'll start to have FOMO at this point. And so I can go home. So that it's that same thing that Jennifer said, that self-awareness, that clarity to say, I'm good. My partying also started to look really different. Just like Jennifer said again, is that it's a different crowd of people. I have sober friends, either previous other addicts or people who just never really had a thing for drinking. So I feel like now with partying, I'm more interested in like the aesthetic, you know, like what were people wearing? Like, what am I gonna wear? Like, what did food even taste like? Like, it's all these other things that I'm enjoying about a party that doesn't, I can just see Jennifer like hardcore nodding and I'm like, I'm with you, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
So like, there's all these other beautiful things about partying that I embrace now. And I think the final thing is that I used to spend a lot of money on alcohol. So for me, going to a bar, I'm like, the amount of money I would need to spend to just get a buzz in is not even worth it. So I'm like, it won't get me there. I'll have to leave, go to the liquor store. Like, it's a whole other pattern that will begin that I can't even get out of. So it's a lot of that self-awareness. And it took a lot of time really getting to know what my triggers were, what was causing me to drink. And so when I feel those things, I get out of those spaces. You know, I spend a lot of time outdoors. I spend a lot of time also taking photos of things that I just notice and like, which also is like a different form of distraction in a space, just being like, hey, I just want to grab a photo of this. Like, you can leave at that point if you want, you know? So yeah, those are a few of like my coping strategies for drinking. I'll tell y'all one funny story that happened. It was like last fall. Film PEI had like their PEI film festival, and I walked into the bar next door, like Merchantman next door, and there was nobody. There was no staff. There was like not a single person in the room. And I was really early in my sobriety, and I'm just like, what the fuck? I have all this liquor and I'm alone in this place. And I'm like, what the fuck? And no lie, these bottles started to talk to me. And so till today, I'm like, am I crazy? But they were just like, we will kill you. You will not get back out of this. Don't even fuck with us. And I kind of kept that with me all along. I was like, you know what? Those bottles threatened me once. I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's really interesting. And I think another coping mechanism that I would add, that sort of mentioning before, of not maybe being prepared how to respond to someone that's trying to urge you to party because they knew the fun party you and they're like, no, come on, is I think just to be prepared going into that environment and knowing what your response is going to be and how you're going to react to it. Because if you don't prepare and you're trying to make a decision on the fly and you are at an early stage in your sobriety, it could be very easy to just give in. So I think that that's really important.
I'm going to jump in one thing here too,
sure.
Chelsey, that they both other panelists made great points, and I it just kind of triggered something for me. I just want to hit on it, is the party scene. And even within, I mean, we didn't have a bar here, so it was the organization or other organizations that provide these spaces for us to have that kind of party atmosphere. The Pride event, that was a big one, but it was also the regular monthly dances that happened at the Delta over the years and other spaces that provided us that space to have those environments that we could get together as a community, and actually had a sense of community at that time. But some of that's lost in many ways because of the way the world changed, the way the community has changed, the internet. We have Grindr, we have other hookup apps now that people are meeting on, so they don't need to go to a bar so much anymore. But I always remember something my partner said to me numerous times over the years when he hears about the couples breaking up or whatever, and I guess it's an old thing from way back, was met at a fire sale, lost in the fire sale, and meeting someone in that party atmosphere, in that bar scene, who was into that drug and alcohol culture. And then, you know, if you're lucky and you find someone who you connect with and you develop a relationship with, then it's having to navigate that outside of that scene and actually creating a relationship that has nothing to do with that drug and alcohol culture anymore. And like, so we're, you know, I guess it's difficult to transition into, I would call it the real world in many ways, outside of that culture. But also, at times I found myself judging people too for still being in it. And I had to be really careful of that, because especially younger kids that are in the 20s now who are kind of in that scene quite heavily. And I'm looking back and going, oh, yeah, I remember those days quite well. And I have to, you know, sometimes I have to catch myself and say, don't judge them. They're at a time of their life where they're supposed to be doing some of these things. Maybe not, you know, help them, help show them that they don't have to continue doing it to that excess, but providing them other spaces, coffee shops, other spaces where they can go and meet other people, especially for hooking up or whatever, and that's not going to put them in a dangerous situation, and encourage that culture to continue of the drugs and the alcohol. So I think that's something that we as a society, we as a community have a responsibility to do, is help provide some of these spaces as well.
May I also jump in with the thing? That's amazing, Troy. Thank you. And like even extending the idea of spaces is like providing like tasty, fun drinks that aren't alcoholic, you know, like because it's like what I know, like when I have gone to events and people have put in the effort to make like a thoughtful thing, or like to procure a thoughtful thing that they know I like, and I can't tell you how like loved and cared for I have felt, like even by total strangers, you know, like when you show up at something and they're like, oh, like we got this new thing for people to try, to make sure there was like an actually good option. And like cranberry sodas do not count. But like when people have put in that care and effort, like any space can feel, like, what am I trying to say? Any space can feel welcoming when like the like thought and care and love is there, and like providing kind of fun, festive equivalents of drinks is kind of one of those ways as well. That doesn't work for everyone, but I mean, like, it's something that like worked for me, so I just wanted to mention.
I think that's a really good point. I love a mocktail myself, so I'm definitely on board with that idea.
And I wanted to add something else there too, is that I think one thing that we're going to start seeing is learning how to hook up and get into relationships without alcohol involved. That's not something that's just in the LGBTQ2+ community. It's everywhere, where most first dates, actually, when you find out like alcohol was involved, right? Or some sort of like drug or something, because we do know that, yeah, that's like peak anxiety inducing. So one of the things that for me came with sobriety was a year of celibacy as well, because I was just like, a lot of my drinking was part of like risky sex, right? Like, so I had to learn, like, or I'm still like, you know, I'm learning like, okay, this is intimacy. This is like, and it is intense. It is scary. It's vulnerability, but we're not used to it. And most people don't want to engage with that feeling. But until they do, and until we start to normalize that and start to create spaces where it's like, okay, it will be big feelings, you know? I don't think we'll be able to move from the party and drinking culture, because I feel like, you know, people want to hook up, but they don't want to feel the feelings. So it's like, how do we marry those two things and be like, you can hook up while you're feeling all the feelings, and it actually feels much better. So, and you'll remember all that shit. So it's like it's a funny line, but that one's something that I hope to see just in society in general, really. Yeah.
I think that's such a good point, and something that we could probably have like a whole Zoom on how a healthy sex life without engaging in alcohol and drug use, and what does that look like. And I think that a lot of people in the community would have the same thing of those years when you're sort of struggling and you're not sure that there's a lot of alcohol and drug use involved, because you're trying to take the edge off a little bit of that nervousness. And also you're just not 100% sure of yourself yet. So it becomes an easy thing to add to kind of give you that confidence booster that you're looking for, but it's a false confidence booster, because like you said, then you're not really experiencing real intimacy. And that's why a lot of us, I think, don't get there until later in life, especially maybe like my generation and before. I know, like when I was growing up, and I wouldn't have even thought of coming out in high school yet, you know, and I'm only 35. So I think the generations younger than us are going to have, that's something hopefully we can facilitate for them so that they don't have to go through the same long haul of, you know. And I think like you mentioned, and Troy mentioned, you know, those feelings of maybe shame and doubt that come along with that Sunday morning hangover of, oh, what did I do last night and who was it with and how did that all work out, that hopefully these sorts of conversations, you know, will start a bigger conversation around that. So I think that's really important. So my next question is, what would you say to members of our community who might be reevaluating their drug or alcohol use? And maybe I'll start with Kendi this time.
As I'm chewing, thanks.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
It's all good. I think it's one of those things where it's like, sobriety is such a personal journey. Like it's kind of like, it's your head, right? It's your internal, it's a very internal thing. So the folks that are struggling, if you're already struggling and you're unsure, then that's definitely a conversation to start engaging with yourself, at least first. Similar to Jennifer, I didn't think I had a problem until the day I sobered up, right? So it was that day I was like, oh shit, I have a serious problem. So, but from there, it became unpacking that and not rushing it. Like, again, for me, I had a whole year with nothing else to do, and it still took a year and it's still taking work to do, but it's really navigating you, because if you know, like now I'm starting to learn a lot about trauma, right? Like a lot, like the word trauma baby, I'm like, yeah, hi. So it's like, if you're seeing that you're struggling, it's also being like, okay, there's something deeper going on with you. There's something, you know, that needs to be addressed. And if you can start to address it yourself, that's great, but also going and starting to ask for help. It doesn't have to necessarily be the Richmond Center and a doctor. It could also be talking to folks that you see in like panels like this, community leaders, your peers, and just being like, yeah, this doesn't sit well with me. You know, just starting to open up, because our truth is really what, you know, heals a lot of our traumas. So if there's anyone out there struggling, I would just say, like, if you can start to address those traumas, it'll start to impact your sobriety, like, and impact the path that you choose to go on in your life, right? And for me, ideally, I want to see a very healed world, because a lot of us are really traumatized. Like, most of us are like living through, like, you know, no surprise, there's so much anxiety. Like, society's fucked. Oh my God, did y'all hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay. Just as I'm saying, society's fucked. Like, what the fuck? Okay.
That's too funny.
So, yeah, like, I really want to see more folks getting to spaces, starting to heal, because my life has changed so much in just 1 year, and it's like visible to other people. And really, when they ask what it is, it's like, I'm sober, but it's more than that, right? My sobriety brought all these other gifts of healing so many other aspects of my life, that it's definitely worth it. If you know you're struggling with it, like, only you would know that, right? That's the other hard part about sobriety. Like, only you know what's up. So if you even like have that slight like thought in the back of your mind, reach out. And same even with me, like, I would say, like, you know, if you have some questions, if you know, like, you can hit me up, and I'd be more than willing to listen, to just go for a walk, to share some tips that I use, because y'all, I don't know if I'm terrified of fucking lightning. Like,
I'm getting thunder here in Surrey as well. So
I think that's where I'll end. So.
All right, thank you. And I just heard a little bit of thunder here in Charlottetown too. So, and so Jennifer, maybe we'll move on to you. Just what would you like to say to members of the community who might be reevaluating their use of alcohol?
Yeah, I feel like kind of like what Kendi said about like you couldn't have told me anything like up until like the day I quit, basically. So if you're having a hard time and you're here, you're already better off than I was towards the end, like, which is amazing. Like, you're here and you're thinking about it, and this is like a way of reaching out for help, like just kind of, yeah, hearing what's up for other people. And yeah, it's hard I can't overstate how much it changed my life. Like, for me, it was, like, everything that I wanted was literally just on the other side of quitting drinking. But I spent like so long trying everything else to make sure I didn't have to quit drinking because I loved drinking so much. And yeah, I don't know. I guess like, if you're in a place where you're like reevaluating stuff and trying to figure out what the right way forward is for you, yeah, like, feel free to reach out to me. You can, like, I think my email's on Instagram, so like, feel free to write me if you want. Yeah, I believe in you. You can do it. Like, I think that's the thing I needed to hear most at the end. Like, when things were really bad for me, that I was capable of making change. Like, any day is a good day to start. Any day is a good day to start. Any day you can make that decision and start taking steps towards something that you know in your heart is better for you. Like, you might not be sure why yet, but I mean, any day. So yeah, why not now?
Perfect, thank you. And Troy, any thoughts on what you would say?
Yeah, I'm actually, I've been chomping at the bit, I want to jump right in. I have to catch myself, so I'll just bite my tongue. Anyway, number one, two things I want to say. Kendi, you're hilarious. Two, you made me really laugh there, so that's great. And Jennifer, it's been a pleasure listening to your stuff. So I'm really, really loving hearing all of you guys' input as well. Both of you made some great points, and one of the things that I felt I've had to do, and I think it's a really good strategy for a lot of people, is, and I mean, you can look at your alcohol and drug use, but unless you're willing to look at some of the underlying issues and those traumas and dealing with some of those things, and in my experience, going to the Richmond Center many years ago after I was first diagnosed with HIV, was the individual that I got, the first questions out of their mouth were all about my sexuality and when did I know and how did I know I was gay, and I'm like, I'm here to get help from you. I'm not here to help you can't figure out your own sexuality, because that's basically what we were doing. Anyway, and so I really didn't get much help from there, and I didn't end up going back. And I kind of needed it at that time, but unfortunately, it took me years of accessing help at other spaces and from friends and stuff to kind of move on from that. But I think part of it too is for me, what worked was I didn't just jump from 0 to 100 all at once. I mean, it was little steps, and it's called harm reduction, and I had to learn how to reduce the harm. Maybe it's not going quite to that excess. Maybe it's doing, this for today, I'm going to do a little less. And if that works, great. And maybe it's tomorrow I'll do even less. It's finding what works for you, and it doesn't work for everybody. Everybody needs to find their own path. But being there to support someone in their journey is crucial, and not judging somebody. I think one of the most the worst things we can possibly do is say something that's going to judge someone. And put it can do so much damage so quickly, and even tiny little comments sometimes that you don't really even think of. You have to catch yourself because it really can impact someone so quickly. Even we all can do better. I think we all can do better in that respect. But in particular, finding some type of an avenue to deal with some of these traumas in our lives, I think is crucial as we move forward as a community.
Thanks so much, Troy, and thanks all of you for those answers. I think that was awesome. Great advice to members of our community. Our last question that I have is, what can Pride as an organization and what can our community as a whole do to better facilitate sober spaces and safer drug use? And, oh, sorry, I guess I gotta give it to somebody. We'll start. Why don't we start with you, Troy?
Sorry, I was typing.
That's okay. I'll
I can't do two things at the same time. I'm not very good at that.
No problem. It's a long question too. So it's, what can Pride PEI as an organization and our community as a whole do to better facilitate sober spaces and safer drug use in our community?
I think, recognizing that there's a need for this is crucial. And aside from just recognizing it, because I think we have over the years, I think it's always kind of been there, but doing something about it is at least making an attempt, finding someone to sponsor an event, and even if it's, even if it costs money, find the money somewhere, because these spaces are crucial. For members of our community. We can't just continue to put people into these situations where they're going to, having to choose, well, if I want to be with my community, I have to put myself at risk. And I don't think anybody should have to be put in that situation. I think as a community, we really need to do better.
Great points. Kendi?
I think it would be nice to see more healing spaces too, where people can come, talk, share, listen, learn, because it just seems like that's a very, being in community is really, really transformative, really healing. So seeing more of that, but from a queer lens would be really important for our communities. We're starting to see it now from a BIPOC lens, right? How important dealing with racial trauma, you need those closed spaces, those private spaces to start to explore that, and to create those connections with people who have had similar experiences. I kind of see it people who have shared trauma are kind of like your comrades, it's the people you've been to war with and now you're out of it maybe, and you're yeah, you can really be my homie because you understand me on a visceral level. So creating more spaces for those people to come together is really healing, because so often we're, our heads are also very deceptive, that our egos will make us think that we're the only ones experiencing this shit in the world. So finding 1, 10, 50, 100 people with the same experience, that is life-changing. Kind of goes back to even representation matters. Even in our pain, representation matters. It's not just external. So I think for me, that would be something I would want to see. I'm really bent on, just society's not okay. So the more healing spaces, the more spaces we can start to address our struggles, our pain. I just think the better our communities become, and PEI being so small, PEI has been plagued with stigma for so long, that starting to have these conversations again, because we're so tight knit, it'll open up so much more, right? that I'm even more invested in that happening here, because I think the change will be more visible. You know, like I think in like a city, in a big city, that's a big task I'm asking to be done, but in PI, not really. So I'm hopeful. I'm scared. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I would like to see coming out of Pride in our communities, kind of moving forward.
Jennifer, over to you.
Yeah, I feel like stuff like this is so amazing. Also, I think like stuff like this, but also closed, which I think is part of also what Kendi was saying about like having those healing spaces where you can connect with people who have been through it also. And like, I don't know, like that feeling that you're all like, now you're all in the boat together. And maybe you don't always have to row so hard all the time, all by yourself. There's something really healing about being held by your community as you're going through it yourself, especially people who might be a little further along than you. Yeah, that stuff's super powerful. And like creating opportunities for that is like, that's creating magic. It like literally is changing the future. It's like changing the course of people's lives to connect people in that way. And I've been thinking a lot too about like events like I feel like we're at the stage of like, like anything can happen with Pride. Like there's events we haven't even thought of yet. Like, and just with like everything happening around us in the world right now, I've been thinking a lot about that. Oh, I forget who said it now. Like the role of the artist is to make revolution irresistible. And like, I feel like Pride is that sort of space as well. And like coming up with events that are like just as desirable kind of across the board for everyone. Like if the only options are like parties that, I don't know, like taking the things that have traditionally existed that are booze soaked and then making them not booze soaked isn't the only way. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Just there's lots of, I see Kate has yeah, someone has said in the chat the actual quote that I was trying to say. Thank you. Yeah, that is it. Thank you. But yeah, anyway, just any chance there is to connect people like through joy and healing is the best. And I don't think anyone's better poised to do that than, I don't know, than Pride, basically, where people have been doing that forever.
That's awesome. And I think also what you guys have said has made me think of like we need to, if we have the resources, the talent, the knowledge, the skills, we need to be as part of our community, not wait for it to come to us, but to take on that work ourselves, which I think us all being part of this event tonight is part of that. I think that what Kendi said about, you know, having like your sort of your comrades in war, I've noticed that a lot in facilitating recovery meetings. Is everyone there has the shared experience of having engaged in addictive behavior, but there's so many more intersections there where, you know, the moms, they go through a totally different kind of thing, and they can all really understand the different pressures and things that lead to sort of that wine mom culture, or there's, you know, different things. And I've always thought that it would be really important to have an LGBTQ2 plus recovery meeting, because our experiences are shared, and when we're speaking about them, we understand each other. So there's not people in the room that maybe we're worried are going to judge us, or they're just not going to understand us. So this has really motivated me to try and put that together and offer a recovery meeting for people in my community. So not that the question's asked to me, but I'm gonna, as the moderator, take a moment. I would also say to anyone that thinks they can offer something, just to do it, to reach out to people and to do it, because if you think there's a need in the community, then there is a need in the community, and you'll find other people that need it as well. So I think that that's really important. So I'm just keeping an eye on time here. We're at about 6:22. So I just want to give you all the opportunity. Any final thoughts, feelings? I always say in my meetings, are you feeling better or worse than you did an hour ago when we got here? So in our little checkout, any thoughts or feelings about this meeting, or anything you didn't get a chance to say that you want to say now? Maybe we'll start with you, Jennifer.
Oh, sorry, am I unmuted? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, just thank you so much for putting this on. It was so great to hear all of your thoughts, Kendi and Troy. And like, I feel like, yeah, just getting to experience this today, and I know that this was sort of like a late breaking conversation in the chat there, helped like crystallize for me how important it is to be able to connect with other queers, whether in recovery or just kind of open to chatting about this stuff, or deciding to like moderate their use. Yeah, it's amazing. I feel a bit perplexed. I'm just, yeah, grateful to have been here, and thank you to everyone who came to listen. It helps me a lot to be able to talk about stuff freely in a place where people get it. So thanks.
Awesome. Kendi, any final thoughts for our group?
I just want to say thanks to Pride for doing this, for creating this space. I think I said before, it's my first time in a space like this, and if there's more, I'd be interested, even just as a participant, learning more, hearing more. I don't often get to talk about sobriety more, but I often end up just saying, no, I'm sober. Like, I'm just usually more on the side of just stating I'm sober instead of like discussing how or what it is and all that. So I saw also in the comments that like things might be starting, and Chelsey, even what you said about having smart recovery for our for very specific LGBTQ2S groups. Yeah, I just look forward to seeing y'all and hopefully working on sobriety cool stuff together.
Awesome. And over to you, Troy, for final thoughts.
I'm actually, I apologize. I was trying to type and hold on to the phone with my side of my head at the same time. It wasn't working quite so well. I'm trying to furiously type here that I have felt terrible over the last year that there's been these adult drop-ins happening in Charlottetown between, I think some of them are at the Holland College and some were at PEI, and Pride was sponsoring them with peers and maybe some other groups as well. And I haven't been able to go to them, and I felt bad that I couldn't get in, and I know that some of them have been really great for different things. And I'm just thinking, since this panel has been so wonderful, it's been eye-opening. It's been the first time I've really had a chance to talk about this openly with a lot of people and feel safe doing so. So thanks for providing that opportunity. But more to that, I think this is something we need to do more often. And even if it's having some of those type of drop-ins just happening online, I think COVID's done a lot of things for us, and I think not all of it's been bad. And one of them is forcing us to do these types of events has shown us we can do them, and they work. And I would just love to see more of it happen as we move forward. I would be so open to having this kind of a discussion on a more regular basis. And for someone who lives in a rural community, I live in Surrey, so it's an hour plus drive for me to go to Charlottetown. It's money in my pocket for gas, and I'm older, so it's the time, it's the energy, it's a whole lot of things. If I can just skip onto the computer and phone after I get myself on microphone and I can again, so you can actually see me, I think it'd be wonderful to participate in that. So yeah, it's fabulous. And Chelsey, you've done a wonderful job. Thank you so much for moderating. It's been fabulous.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot. And I think that is actually such a good point, Troy, that, you know, and I know this has been a problem before, is we're so Charlottetown centric sometimes here, and we do have a lot of people in our community that live outside of Charlottetown. And, you know, our community is adversely affected by other things such as poverty, and there's a lot of other issues that would make it difficult for someone to be able to come in person. So I think, especially during this time with COVID, where it's difficult to find physical space, that we should try and do this ongoing. Another event like this where everyone could join and speak, and you know, we can kind of like run like a meeting, and you know, I think lots of probably other ideas will come from that. I just saw a really cute kitten. I can't keep my focus with that.
Andy, you're teasing us.
Yeah. But I think that's really great. Like, you know, an idea came out of us having this conversation today. I'm sure lots of people who are watching, I hope that will create ideas for them that we can, you know, help with. And I just want to say thanks to Andy, John, Shannon for being here with us tonight, being behind the scenes. All the work you've done made us look really good, made it really easy for us. And to the rest of the team at Pride, 6:28, so we're ending right on time. And I just want to wish everyone a safe and happy Pride. And I think I can speak on behalf of myself and the rest of the panelists. Please feel free to reach out to us if you're looking for resources, if you think we can help, if you just need to vent to somebody, we're here. So thank you guys so much.
And I'll thank you, Chelsey, real quick. Thank you for a fabulous session. That was incredibly well moderated. That was the tightest, most beautiful 90 minutes that I've had so far. Thank you to panelists on behalf of myself and Pride PEI. This is setting a new high bar, and I can't wait to push it even further. So I will take you all up on that contribution to move forward with this. So happy Pride to everyone. Have a fabulous evening. We'll talk to you all and see you all soon.
Happy Pride. Bye.
Bye, all.
Ciao.